Prolonged bullying cited as a contributing factor as a Perth teenager pleads guilty to injuring a fellow student. Vladimir Putin says there'll be no peace until Russia achieves its goals in Ukraine. A final farewell fit for a Dame, celebrating the life of Barry Humphreys. And Mitch Marsh falls just short of a century as Nathan Lyon closes in on 500 Test wickets. Good evening. Briana Shepherd with ABC News. A 15-year-old student has pleaded guilty to attacking another student with a sharp weapon at Perth's Kaur Senior High School and been granted bail under 24-hour curfew. The teenager's lawyer said his client had been subjected to horrendous bullying at school over several years.
It was an attack that left a 16-year-old boy with several injuries and the school community badly shaken. And now in court, an admission by the 15-year-old accused of aggravated unlawful wounding with a sharp weapon.
The young person pled guilty today, accepts that this happened.
Speaking outside the Perth Children's Court, the 15-year-old's lawyer said his client had been subjected to bullying at the school for the last 4 years.
The bullying has been horrendous, and it doesn't excuse the behaviour, but it is a factor that...
There's no suggestion the victim was one of the people said to be bullying the accused. Magistrate Andre Horrigan granted bail, but the teenager will only be released once a safety plan has been put in place, and they'll then have to live at home under a 24-hour curfew.
The young person doesn't want to go back to that school and will not go back to that school because bullying is having a terrible effect. So that means that a lot of weight's off the shoulders.
The Department of Education says it cannot comment on the bullying allegations while the matter is before the court. The teenager will be sentenced next month. Nick Perpich, ABC News.
A Perth man has pleaded guilty to almost 120 charges of the online sextortion of young girls in Australia and overseas. 28-year-old Mohammed Rashid was first charged in 2020 when police said he befriended the victims by pretending to be a social media celebrity. He then blackmailed them into performing sexual acts which he viewed online. Rashid, who is already serving a jail term for sexually abusing a 14-year-old Perth girl, was again remanded in custody until he faces the District Court for sentencing next year. Australia's plans to acquire nuclear-powered submarines have taken a major step forward, with critical legislation passing the US Congress. Supporters of the deal have pushed back on concerns it could be scrapped or changed by a future US president.
This is a 5-minute vote.
After months of wrangling, a convincing endorsement from the House of Representatives.
On this vote, the yeas are 310, the nays are 118.
The AUKUS legislation was bundled together with a broader defence package and allows the sale of at least 3 Virginia-class submarines from the early 2030s before locally made subs are built.
This is a historic achievement. It's the first time in American history that there has been the authorisation of a sale of a nuclear-powered submarine to another country.
The legislation also paves the way for Australian defence contractors to train in the US and enables the Australian government to make a payment of $3 billion to speed up construction at American shipyards.
The payment profile is now being developed with the US Navy. We can hardly expect the US to provide Virginia-class submarines to us unless they uplift their industrial base.
Overall, the AUKUS project is expected to cost up to $368 billion over 3 decades.
The legislation makes clear that whoever is in the White House by the time the subs are transferred would have to certify that it's still in line with America's foreign policy interests and wouldn't undermine its own submarine capability. That's prompted questions as to whether a future president could back out of the deal.
Whatever president that might be would face tremendous blowback in terms of trying to undo what we've accomplished here today.
What we've seen is legislation that permits a possible future sale, but it's got so many get-out-of-jail-free cards for the United States that it's hardly worth the paper it's written on for Australian purposes.
The task ahead of the current president to sign the laws now on the way to his desk. Jade McMillan, ABC News, Washington.
Israel has deepened its ground incursion in southern Gaza as it warned the war with Hamas could last several more months. Local firms say internet and phone services have been cut again for the 6th time during this war. In the north, the IDF says it's focusing on detaining suspected Hamas militants. Releasing this video, they say, shows men surrendering their weapons outside a hospital. The US National Security Advisor travelled to the region to meet leaders about the direction of the war, as its government continues to urge Israel to minimise civilian deaths.
He did talk about possible transitioning from what we would call high-intensity operations, which is what we're seeing them do now, to lower-intensity operations sometime, in the near future. But I don't want to put a timestamp on it.
In a surprise move, the European Union has decided to open membership negotiations with Ukraine, a decision its president is hailing as a major victory. But hours earlier, Vladimir Putin doubled down on his commitment to the war, telling a marathon news conference there will only be peace when Russia achieves its goals.
It was the Russian president's end-of-year televised news conference, and the first time foreign media were allowed in since Russia invaded Ukraine. But it was a staged affair with no unscripted surprises, not even from a deep fake Putin saying hello.
Vladimir Vladimirovich, здравствуйте.
Well, I see you can look like me and talk in my voice, but I decided that only one person should look like me and talk in my voice, and that's going to be me.
And the real Vladimir Putin vowed to press on with the war until Kiev capitulates. But in a breakthrough for Ukraine, agreement towards EU membership.
To the people of Ukraine, we are on their side, and this decision made by the member states is extremely important for the credibility of the European Union.
This is a truly remarkable result for Ukraine and for the whole of Europe. Another step towards Ukraine's full membership in the EU.
Out on the bitterly cold battleground near Bakhmut, these Ukrainian fighters are holding the line against Russia.
If there's no support from the Western countries, then it's going to get really bad. Russia will seize Ukraine, then it will be the turn of the Baltic states and Poland.
More weaponry and manpower can't come soon enough.
We live in a very brutal time. Will this keep dragging on? Give us people, give us weapons, and this will be over very soon.
There's no end in sight, but these battle-worn soldiers are digging in. Jenny Lavelle, ABC News.
Lawyers for former Liberal staffer Bruce Lamman have challenged the objectivity of journalist Lisa Wilkinson over a text message she sent accusing his former boss, Senator Linda Reynolds, of lying through her teeth. Mr Lamman is suing Ms Wilkinson and Network 10 for defamation over an interview during which Brittany Higgins first alleged she was raped at Parliament House.
It was a bombshell interview, but Bruce Lamman's trial over the alleged rape was ultimately abandoned, with no findings against him. Now his lawyers have gone after those who brought the allegation to light, accusing them of burying anything that cast doubt on Brittany Higgins' account. Central to today's cross-examination of Lisa Wilkinson was a text message she fired off to her producer during question time in Parliament on the day the story surfaced. Penny Wong magnificent, Reynolds lying through her teeth. Mr Lamman's lawyer Matthew Richardson suggested the message showed Ms Wilkinson had believed Ms Higgins' story, regardless of the evidence. You could not be objective, I suggest, in terms of making a fair assessment of the evidence. Mr Richardson also accused the program of burying the government's official response and suggesting Ms Wilkinson should have challenged a comment by Ms Higgins that her former boss, Michaelia Cash, had suggested she suck it up when she said she felt panicky coming into Parliament each day. It's cartoonish villainy, isn't it, the way that it's portrayed there? Ms Wilkinson said she couldn't say if it was true because she wasn't there, but added, "I think a lot of women over the years who work in politics have been told to suck up situations, Mr Richardson, so I think it is possible that those words were spoken." Later, she was shown an abridged quote suggesting security staff had not looked in on Ms Higgins, when she had stated they had. That's very poor journalism, isn't it, to conceal that? "I'm disappointed to see that," Ms Wilkinson conceded. One thing revealed today was that a tape of a conversation between Brittany Higgins' lawyer Leon Swire, her fiancé and a friend, which emerged on Sky News earlier in the week, won't now be tendered as evidence. The case will continue on Monday. Elizabeth Byrne, ABC News.
Public transport will be free of charge for 5 weeks over summer in a bid to ease cost of living pressures by the state government. At an estimated cost of $10 million, passengers will pay no fare on trains, buses or ferries in Perth and regional WA from December 24 up until January 28. To take advantage of the free summer transport, commuters will still need to use a Smart Rider card. The government says this is so passenger numbers can be monitored, with services adjusted accordingly, and to measure how popular it is.
We want to monitor the usage because this is all about evidence-based and making decisions into the future. So we'd love to see a great uptake of this measure, and if it's successful, we can look at doing more of these types of measures, but we need the evidence to back that up.
It was a final farewell fit for a dame. Politicians, pop stars, comedians and kings have all shared stories of Barry Humphrey's comedic genius during his state memorial service at the Sydney Opera House. 8 months after his passing, the man who brought Dame Edna to life has been remembered for his wit, curiosity and passion for the arts.
It couldn't begin any other way.
Hello, possums. Yes, it's me, Dame Edna, and aren't I looking gorgeous?
With a nod to Barry Humphrey's notorious alter egos.
I thought, what if Joan is wearing an identical frock?
There were tributes from musicians, media moguls and even members of the royal family. The Arts Minister delivering this message on behalf of the King.
I suspect that all those who appeared on stage or on TV with Barry's Dame Edna, or who found her appearing at the back of the royal box, will have shared that unique sensation where fear and fun combine.
They've found me a better seat.
Barry Humphries lived to make people laugh, with his eccentric characters often standing in stark contrast to one another, representative, apparently, of Australia's own House of Parliament.
If Dame Edna represented the refinement, the consideration and the style of the upper house, Celeste was, without doubt, the lower house.
Behind the scenes, he provided a blueprint for comics.
Asking a comedian to improvise a comedy show is like asking a magician to do real magic. And Barry Humphries had real magic, and it never went away.
His appeal and impact illustrated by the dignitaries and fans who turned out at the Sydney Opera House. Time also to reflect on Barry Humphries, the man, father and advocate for sobriety.
His was a life in 2 acts. The chaos of addiction, and then from the 70s onwards, his sobriety. He was enormously proud of it, and he regarded it as his greatest achievement.
Throughout the service, there have been many references to Barry Humphries' distaste for political correctness, a stance that sometimes landed him in trouble, most recently for controversial comments made against people who are transgender. But for his fans, it was his willingness to push boundaries that made him so appealing. Fittingly, his final curtain call garnered a standing ovation.
He died in April, aged 89.
Ex-tropical cyclone Jasper continues to deliver heavy rain to far north Queensland, hampering clean-up efforts. Roads are flooded and power remains cut to thousands, but overall there is a sense of relief the damage wasn't worse. Tourism officials, though, say the region has suffered a significant financial blow.
The overwhelming force of nature escaping Barron Gorge. The aftermath of tropical cyclone Jasper still delivering a drenching. Flash flooding has cut roads, leaving thousands without power. Repair crews can't get through.
No internet, no mobile, but luckily enough I bought a generator last weekend, so I've got the fridges running, so I haven't lost any food and I can make a cup of tea.
In Mossman, unsuspecting locals who ventured out got stuck when rivers rose again.
We come over at the wrong time before I died.
We thought we'd come and get some stuff from Woolies, but we just didn't quite time it right.
While residents are grateful they avoided major damage, there is still a lot of work left to do. And with the amount of rain that's been pouring in the area, it's likely the clean-up won't be done for days. The Bureau says the system is continuing westward.
It's expected to continue that way over the next 24 hours and possibly move into the Gulf at some stage early on Saturday.
In Cairns, some businesses reopened to welcome tourists.
We are used to this kind of weather in Japan. We have typhoon season, so it's okay.
The first cruise ship docked today.
It was a sort of race. The cyclone was coming and we were catching up with it, and that was a bit ominous.
We've been prisoners on the ship for 2.5 days. I need some exercise.
Tourism has lost 10% of school holiday traffic.
Across the region, we've seen cancellations and lost bookings for a total of about $60 million worth of lost visitor expenditure.
But in true far north Queensland fashion, locals always find a silver lining.
We've got plenty of cold beer in the fridge.
Toby Jers-Lewis, ABC News, Mossman.
US interest rates have likely peaked, leading to an outbreak of calm. Here's Daniel Ziffer with finance.
We've got war in the Middle East, a heating climate, superpowers butting heads. You'd think the stock markets would be freaking out. The volatility index essentially measures how up and down traders think the US markets will be. Predictions of volatility are lower now than they were before COVID first hit. So either good, stable times are here, or we just got better at dealing with chaos. Maybe both. The Dow Jones index just hit a record high. It tracks the fortunes of 30 mega companies like McDonald's, Nike, Apple and Boeing. And the stock market is not the economy, but it is an indicator. And that optimism about the potential end of rising interest rates might spread after the US did it this week and the European and UK central banks left rates on hold overnight. The Aussie dollar didn't move much today after yesterday's big bump. And with iron ore at nearly $135 a tonne, our economy continues to be powered by magic rocks people can turn into steel. Our market buoyant, particularly for the three stocks that comprise most of it: CSL, Commonwealth Bank and BHP. Our energy market operator, AEMO, has a new report about where we'll be getting the juice for our national electricity market. The market doesn't include the NT or WA, so apologies, but this is what it looks like for most of us. You can see the forecast speedy decline of coal because the cost of producing power through renewables is cheaper than burning dead dinosaur dirt. AEMO thinks they'll be shut in 15 years, earlier than previously thought. Necessary, but a hard switch in communities built on the back of powering the nation. And that's finance.
A 13-year-old has just become the Australian National University's youngest ever graduate, and the boy genius has already turned his attention to next year and a PhD. Experts estimate fewer than 4,000 Aussie kids are exceptionally skilled, and of those, just 100 could be considered prodigies.
Graduating uni with an honours degree is an achievement worth celebrating for any student, but particularly when you're just 13.
It's another stepping stone toward my goal of getting a PhD in music.
The youngest student in the ANU's 77-year history, Nathaniel's extraordinary talent in maths and music defies a diagnosis of global developmental delay at 12 months old, and doctors advise he'd never function independently.
I had to stay in the intensive care unit for 10 days after I was born, and then my parents were crying at home, hoping that their son will survive.
3 years later, Nathaniel started primary schooling at home and within 4 years was on to high school subjects. Piano lessons from 96-year-old musician Eli Gray-Smith inspired an interest in musical theory and composition. And at 11, Nathaniel enrolled in a Bachelor of Music.
He wanted me to take music theory because my fingers were too weak for piano, and then he realized that I was actually good at it. It probably appealed to my logical brain when I was 7, especially the act of composing music. That's why I'm a composer.
Nathaniel's since added the clarinet, saxophone and cello to his repertoire and has had several compositions professionally performed. While rejection from an honours program in Singapore last year proved a blessing in disguise.
I thought my future was going to end there, but then ANU enlightened my future and hopefully is going to grant me a PhD.
I think that academic merit must be the most important thing, but I think also in Nat's case, he was really suitable for this level of study.
The teenager considers support from his parents, classmates and teachers critical to his recent success, not to mention...
Thomas Edison also said genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration.
An attitude hitting all the right notes. Emmy Groves, ABC News, Canberra.
To sport, and Australia opener David Warner says his century celebration was a direct message to his detractors after he made 164 on day 1 of the first test against Pakistan. His innings and 90 from Mitch Marsh helped Australia to 487, while debutant Amir Jamal showed his potential with 6 wickets.
It was an innings full of flourish and class. David Warner rolling back the years with a brilliant 164 on day 1, sending a clear message to his detractors, not just Mitchell Johnson.
A nice little quiet shush. It's anyone who wants to write stories about me and, you know, trying to use headlines, get headlines, that stuff doesn't bother me. It's just the fact that I have to go out there, do what I have to do, and I'm allowed to celebrate how I want.
His innings set the groundwork for Australia, which started day 2 with 346 on the board. Mitch Marsh wasting no time moving things along.
With this pace, you can't bowl there.
The all-rounder bludgeoning his way to a home half-century in front of family. Pakistan needed a lift and Amir Jamal delivered.
Got him! And it's an absolute beauty as well.
Claiming Alex Carey and Mitch Starc in quick succession on his way to a 6-wicket haul on debut. After the lunch break, Marsh fell 10 runs short of a century.
Bowled first ball.
Australia losing its last 5 wickets for 76, bowled out for 487. Pakistan started with purpose, seeing off the quicks while offering a few chances. But the introduction of Nathan Lyon in the 11th upset their rhythm.
Oh, it's past the edge.
The openers remained resolute, however. Abdullah Shafiq taking his scoring opportunities.
Takes on Lyon and takes him up nicely.
But Lyon ultimately won the battle as he closed in on 500 test wickets.
Yeah, he's got him.
Mitch Starc then struck late, removing Pakistan captain Shan Masood for 30, as the tourists went to stumps at 2 for 132, trailing by 355. Tom Wildey, ABC News.
The Dockers playing group and coaching staff have voted for 28-year-old key defender Alex Pearce to continue as captain. Pearce led the side through a difficult 2023 after taking the helm when Nat Fyfe stepped down after 6 years as skipper. Andy Brayshaw and Caleb Sarong were also returned as vice-captains. Alex Pearce says he wants to take Fremantle to a premiership.
It's the first thing. Yeah, I want to be a premiership captain. And I want to be respected by my teammates. I think they're pretty simple things to go by. It hasn't changed much from when I first walked through the door.
And now to the weather with Herlyn, Kaur, and we might see a shower and thunderstorm tomorrow, Herlyn.
That is right, Bri. A bit of a change later in the day is possible. It was sunny today, though, in Perth, reaching a top of 32.1 degrees just after 2 p.m. from a low of 15.5 degrees around 10 past 5 this morning. There were several towns that got to the single digits in the south today, with Jacob and Salmon Gums both dropping to lows of 6 degrees, the coldest temperature in the state. Argyle, though, in the Kimberley set a new maximum temperature record with 45.3 degrees today, beating its previous record of 45.1 in December 2018. Although the hottest town today was Fitzroy Crossing, where it clocked a scorching 46 degrees this afternoon. And speaking of heat, there's currently an extreme heat wave forecast for parts of the Kimberley and North Interior, as you can see there, so temperatures will remain very high right into next week. On the satellite, and we saw some low-level cloud in the interior today, as well as parts of the NT. A broad trough will develop over southern inland areas of the state tomorrow, which is what will bring those possible showers and thunderstorms to parts of Perth, as well as the southwest land division from the late afternoon and evening tomorrow. Nationally, and Tropical Cyclone Jasper is currently over the Cape York Peninsula and is slowly tracking westwards, likely moving off land and into the ocean, but that won't stop the wet weather from continuing, especially in northern Queensland. Brisbane is in for showers and a possible storm tomorrow, reaching 32 degrees, sunny and 35 in Sydney, easing showers down in Hobart, partly cloudy for Adelaide, and showers in Darwin, a possible storm 33 degrees. Back to WA's north, there'll be isolated showers and thunderstorms over the northern and eastern Kimberley, as well as for parts of the North Interior. Many towns in the north will remain in the 40s, including for parts of the Gascoyne as well, top of 43 in Newman. It'll be warm and windy over central parts tomorrow. There'll be parts of the region with severe heat wave conditions, mainly inland. There's also the chance of thunderstorms over the central wheat belt and central west, as well as for parts of the Great Southern and Goldfields, most likely in the late afternoon and evening. There's an elevated fire danger warning tomorrow with a total fire ban for parts of the Midwest Gascoyne, Perth Metropolitan, Southwest and Lower West regions. In the city, it'll be mostly sunny tomorrow with a slight chance of a shower and thunderstorm in the late afternoon and evening. So those of you out watching the cricket will most likely be in the clear, fingers crossed. It's set to reach a top of 34 degrees from a low of 18 overnight. On the local waters, winds will be southeasterly up to 30 knots with a swell of around 1 metre. The sun will rise at 5 minutes past 5 and set at 19 minutes past 7. Now, looking ahead, any of those lingering showers left on Sunday will be hopefully cleared out by early afternoon, reaching 30 degrees, sunny and 31 for Monday. Tuesday, a top of 33 degrees. Wednesday and Thursday will be windy with partly cloudy conditions, tops of 35 degrees. And finally, 30 on Friday, Bri.
Thanks, Herlyn. And finally tonight, the South Australian Government has referred allegations of misconduct against an Aboriginal Art Centre collective to 2 regulatory bodies. It follows claims by artists that non-Aboriginal assistants have painted elements of the artwork.
Works continuing at the APY Art Centre Collective Gallery in Adelaide, although the organisation has been battling.
We are one of the most scrutinised Indigenous arts organisation. We've had 2 reviews done, which has been really hard for us to go through.
The collective's workers were accused of inappropriately intervening in Aboriginal painting and its managers of exploiting artists, allegations it strongly denied. The National Gallery of Australia postponed a major exhibition, but a review at Commission cleared the APY Art Centre collective of any wrongdoing. Now, a panel appointed by the SA Government has referred allegations to the Office of the Registrar of Indigenous Corporations and the Australian Competition and Consumer Commission.
For ORIC, it's around management practices and governance issues. For ACCC, it's around consumer protections, but also contractual arrangements with the artists.
For us to be examined so crucially and so hard when that examination's not happening in other elements of the First Nations art space.
Taxing and traumatic, justifying your integrity, justifying your artistic practice, the thing that you're most proud of, this process hasn't reached a conclusion yet. The can's been kicked further down the road.
The review panel is also not releasing a report, so the public can't see what evidence it thought warranted investigation by those authorities.
The panel didn't have powers to protect witnesses, it didn't have powers to compel witnesses to give evidence, so we've gone down that path of them referring to ORIC and ACCC.
One of the key themes from people who spoke to the review was the need to resolve this quickly so the Aboriginal art sector can move on and minimise damage. But now the allegations have been referred to 2 new bodies. We don't know how long it will.
And that's ABC News for now. Good night.